All right, hello and welcome to episode 21 of the Too Hard to Pass podcast. I am your co-host Juan Martinez, and to my left or to my right, I'm not really sure, but he is here subbing in for Jacques Slade, who is in parts unknown. I don't know if I'm supposed to reveal where he is, but anyways, Ian Stonebrook, everybody, how you doing, man?
Hey, happy to be here. I actually got the spoiler from where Jacques is, so just DM me for any teasers or insight.
Yes. So, Ian, he works at Boardroom right now, but he used to work at Nice Kicks during, like, I would say, like the height of the sneaker blog era. But before we get to that, though, Ian, I kind of want to like this is what I do when we have like substitutes coming in for Jacques. We kind of like do this little thing where like, oh, Jacques is so cool. How cool is he? So, Ian, how cool is Jacques Slade?
Man, I think the first time I met him in a media event, it was Adidas Crazy Light, and he ripped me at half court in the influencer game that Gus Johnson
Really?
was calling. Yeah. So I got served some humble pie from Jock pretty soon. I think he might have put down a dunk in that too, man. But
Oh,
Jock is uh,
wow.
Jock is an awesome dude, man. I got a chance to work with him for maybe the better part of a half year. I took him on the longest walk ever to go for a burrito for lunch, which I think we both regretted. I definitely didn't map out how that was, but yeah, I mean, this guy has movie credits that folks don't even know about. He's done anything and everything, and is a just good ass guy. Aside from that, so um, yeah, even though and also too, I can say that while we're in cool places right now, he's from what you tell me in a much cooler place than both of us. So
Yes, actually, yeah. Where he is right now is a very cool place, and I'm just like, why am I not there? Why are like we could have been potting there, but he does his own thing, and I'm just here like kind of doing the podcast stuff while he's not around. But I'm still in a good spot though because I get to talk to you and like catch up on all the old days and everything, man. So Ian, you used to work at Nice Kicks. I used to work at Kicks on Fire. And there was actually like an alternate reality where me and you could have worked together. I don't know if you know
100%.
that. Um like I remember when I was like writing for different content like examiner.com, it was like a content farm like in the early 2010s and everything. And I was actually talking to Matt Halfhill about like maybe jumping on and everything, and there was a possibility that I was gonna, start up at Nice Kicks, but things kind of got in the way, and I ended up at Kicks on Fire, and one thing led to another, and that's where I ended up. But the thing that I wanted to talk about too was like, when I would, sometimes go on like, every other blog, I kind of do, because when I was there, I was doing the features and everything, kind of like, doing like not necessarily like the more newsy stuff, kind of like just coming up whatever was in my mind and like putting that to like on the website. And sometimes I would go on Nice Case and I'd be like Ian Stonebrook, and I'd be like, oh man, this guy's good. This guy's like putting up good stuff in there. And I'm like, sometimes I'd be like, man, I wish I had thought of that. I wish I had thought of like, putting together some like a piece like that. And I'm just like, man. And, and just one thing, just all through the years, I would just see like the good stuff that you were doing. And I just like always had huge respect for the stuff that you did at Nice Cakes, man. And now you're at the boardroom. And yeah, man, like, I thought it'd just be great to like, kind of chat and reminisce about those days and kind of like what you're doing right now, man.
No, I feel the same way. And I mean, I wish you would have been down in Austin. I might have been out of a job there sooner, man, because we're on a lot of the
Absolutely
same
not.
beats and stuff. But no, I feel the same way, man. There's a lot of stuff that you did. I still remember, like, the I think it was Concord 11s and the 112 video.
Oh,
Writing about that back in the day and stuff like that. I mean,
all
obviously,
right. I think I know what that story is there. Yeah.
yeah, things of that nature. A lot of the same kind of celebrity retrospectives and shoot. I mean, even it's funny. There's like a longer story to this, but I used to do this thing called Bring 'em Back for the site. That was like every Saturday or Sunday, whatever it was, like
Yeah.
a retro or shoe wanted to come back, and I just thought it was the coolest, smartest, like punctual thing ever. And then randomly, like I was having like a South by South was going on, had a real good day, and I was searching for a photo of something, and I see Bring It Back from like 2007 on Kicks on Fire, and I was like, I totally subconsciously copied this without even knowing. I was like, my
Yeah.
life's a lie. So
No,
no, I always
absolutely not.
I always liked what you guys did, and I still remember going home to Michigan to shoot hoops to the gym and seeing kids on Kicks and Fire shirts, and I was like, oh man, it's popping out here too, man. So yeah, it's my pleasure.
Yeah, man. Like I remember those days when we used to give out those wristbands and those
Hmm.
T-shirts and everything. It was just a, just a nice, easy way to like promote the website and everything. And man, just how things have changed, right? Like it used to be like get to the website, get to the website. Everything used to be like a platform to get to the website, and now it's just absolutely totally different nowadays. Everything's on social media, and how like the blogs have changed, and it's just a different world now, man. It's just like it's just boggling to me like how things have like kind of changed up, and how we used to make those content. Like I don't even know if I was still there if I would be like putting up pieces like that anymore. I would be more focused on like producing videos, or like
Sure.
what's a good social post and everything. Like, what do you think about like the change in terms of like the focus being like back in the days being like get to the website, get those clicks, get those views and everything, to like now where it's about producing content that's like memeable, like something that's going to get people talking, or something that's a little bit more like maybe outrageous. And sometimes I'll take the nice kicks. Des does great work there,
It
but
does, yeah.
it's definitely not what we were doing back then. So I mean, what do you think about that change?
I mean, I think it's always just going to be, faster, fresher, and younger. You know what I mean? Like, at the
Yeah.
end of the day, like, we were the people that were, I don't want to say killing print, you know what I mean? But like moving at a much faster pace and stuff. And it's like, I always think like when obviously I looked up to like, both buddies, Nick, you know what I mean? DePaula and
Yeah.
Ingval and stuff like that, or,
Hmm.
Russ and, Tony G and Scoop and all those folks at, Slam, Soul Collector and whatever. And it's like, there was maybe, even though like Kicks Mag was like a side project per se to like, the actual magazine that was those guys' day job, or Soul Collector came out maybe quarterly, maybe monthly, I'm not sure, but either way,
Yeah.
that's like decent lead time to do like really well executed photo shoot, interview, different editorials and stuff like that, and like really good stuff came out of it. The flip side, I'm sure for you, like during the height of the height or the traffic boom, I mean, we're probably writing 16 stories a day, like, and I mean, I know that sounds crazy, and it's not like everything was like the longest, most thoughtful, well researched, and it wasn't like total shit either. You know what I mean? Like we knew
Yeah.
what we were
Yeah.
doing and stuff like that. But it's like this is just the younger, fresher, faster version of that. I mean, just like I'm sure you had friends growing up who like, man, you always knew it was coming out because you knew how to navigate Nike Talk, and you're
Yeah.
like, oh, just like go on Nike Talk or ISS, and like, I have no idea how to navigate a forum, and I'm sure for some kids it's like, wait, the blog, like this is here, this is there, like no, like all right, Instagram, TikTok, whatever, YouTube, it's right in front of me, so like I mean, yeah, it kind of blows for me sometimes because I still like to write and read. But like the irony is, man, I mean, I listen to podcasts probably more than I read articles or books or, it's close. Maybe I still like both, but yeah, it's where the eyeballs are at. So I'm not hating, but I do think that there is still something to be said about like thought and research, and I say that is a self-proclaimed know-it-all who's been wrong on shit too. You know what I mean? Like I have, I'm sure if you go through all my backstories, there's been things that not only was I wrong about in terms of what would happen in the future, I thought I had all the research down, and it's Getty Images didn't have a picture of Penny when he debuted the Foams of the Garden. You know what I mean? So
Right. Right.
in my head, it's well they had wow, DC was the next game, Bullets, that makes a lot of sense. So like I say that all to say is there's always going to be things wrong or corners cut, but at the same time too, I mean, there's some beauty in the mythology. You know what I mean? So, yeah, it's different for sure, but I think whoever can thread those needles right is doing it right.
Oh yeah, absolutely, absolutely. And it's nice that you can still actually go back to your archives. Yeah, like at Nice Kicks and everything. Like you can kind of just Google your name and it's still there. I don't have that luxury anymore.
Hey,
I think there's been like a huge purge on Kicks on Fire, and I'm like, oh man, I have to go back to the Wayback Machine now
no,
to
I'm
actually
right.
look
I've
up like,
lost a lot of stuff too.
yeah,
Actually, probably. probably, in my opinion, and maybe it's just you always miss what you lost, you know what I mean, or whatever. But probably the
Yeah.
best thing I ever wrote there, it was like the 20 best kicks of the 2010s. Like
Mm.
wrote it like to the like 5 minutes before going out to the bar, and New Year's, 2019, 2020.
Right.
Yeah, it's gone. So like
Oh man.
yeah, I mean the whole idea that the internet's forever, good, bad, or indifferent, it's not. So
we
it's kind of
were
how it
we
goes.
we we were led to believe that the internet is forever. It's like everything that you wrote, everything that you posted is gonna stick. Not necessarily the case because server costs are expensive.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, which is above my pay grade, but yeah, no, it
Yeah,
is what it is, you know?
it is what it is. But you kind of just find your ways. I remember I wrote a piece about it was with Reebok, and they flew me out to like Charlotte to like it was like a photo shoot with like Allen Iverson's like wife and kids, and like Melody Asani was there. It was like a
Oh,
collab that
sick.
they did, and it was like literally I had to fly from LA to Charlotte and then fly back the same day, but it was just like a whole like travel log of what I did, like getting there, having like some bojangles at the airport, and like
Great
going to
spot.
meet like going to meet like AI's family, and talking to Melody and all that stuff. And talking to I believe it was like the photographer Gary Land,
Mhm.
and it was just this really like I was really super proud of it. And now you actually have to like really look for it now on the internet to even find it anymore, because you can't just Google it anymore. It's just like, oh man, like you just have to know where to go just to even find it, and it's a little bit of a bummer. And it's like, oh dude, like it's a record. It's a thing of like I did this, and now it's like oh no, where to go. But yeah, it's a little bit of a bummer, but at the same time it's like I still have that memory of like actually doing that, and just those times, man, like those old days. Because I don't think like this era is really experiencing like working with the brands, or like doing that kind of stuff the way that we did.
Yeah,
um
I'm honestly not sure on that, you know? I mean, I do think that they still probably get out to events and stuff, and I think that, COVID put a cramp on a lot of the activations, and I
right,
do
right.
think that it seems like the activations that there are probably more like small select media group, like with a little
Yeah,
bit more of like a focus than like, we got 20 editors from Kicks on Fire to Nice Kicks to Teen Vogue to Sports Illustrated or whatever.
yeah, yeah.
But I mean, at the same point too, I mean, I'll be honest, the last time I was on a trip like that, not that I didn't get, some good stuff from it, but I was like, this ain't for me no more, you know what I mean? And not on any like arrogant stuff or anything like that, but it's for somebody in their 20s finding their way in their writing or photojournalism or video career. Not for, 35, 36-year-old guy, with a kid on the way or a kid at the time. So,
Yeah,
and not that no age shame, and if somebody's still out there, that's cool. You know what I mean? But
yeah.
I do think that it's yeah, I don't know. It's always changing.
Oh yeah, absolutely, absolutely. And that is kind of like what I wanted to kind of dovetail to into like talking about is like the state of sneaker journalism, as it's like to call it. Because Jacques posted a reel the other day, and he was like responding to somebody who said, sneaker journalism is dead, and it kind of got me to thinking, what was sneaker journalism? Like, what would you, well, Ian? Do you think what we consider? Would you consider what we did in our time, was it journalism? Because for my perspective, I'll just give my perspective. I never consider what I did as like journalism per se, because I kind of came from like a background sort of journalism. Because before that, I was writing about video games and like doing product reviews, actually like chasing stories and like trying to get like scoops and all that stuff. By the time I got to Kicks on Fire, it was very much talking to brands, working with them on like different projects, and like not necessarily talking about reviews. Like we would get stuff in the mail, and I would talk about the shoes. I would talk whether I liked it or not, but I would never consider what I do like looking at it or like posting pictures about it like journalism. And when people today ask about like what sneaker journalism is, I kind of want to know what they mean by that. Because do they want reviews? Do they want like hard news? Do they want like, because like I said, I don't consider what I did at Kicks on Fire journalism to be, per se. But like, how about you? Like, what did you consider what you did at Nice Kicks journalism? Which, whatever your opinion is your opinion, and it's totally fine.
Well,
Yeah, totally
can
cool.
I ask a question back
Sure.
first?
Sure.
Would you consider what you did based on that stuff, would you consider it to be influencer marketing?
Hmm. I would say a little. Yeah. Yeah. It's probably a little bit of that too. But at the same time, I never. Okay. So, yes, that is one way to put it. Yeah. I would say that's true. But at
And
the
I don't
same
mean
time,
anything like
like,
negative
yeah,
or
yeah, yeah.
condescending by that or anything like that on
Oh
either
no,
end.
no, no,
Yeah.
absolutely. Because that's part of the game. Like that's what they do is like they send you stuff and the I wouldn't say like the push, but like there's like a wink wink nudge nudge like hey, like we're showing you giving you this thing and talk about it and all that stuff. But at the same time, I never really at least from my perspective, I never like colored my helped me color my opinion about like a particular product. If it was like a bad pair of shoes, I would say it's a bad pair. It's just not necessarily something to my liking. I remember like I would get in heat, a little bit of heat with like Jordan Brand every once in a while, like because they would send stuff and I'd just be like, it's not my thing, or it's not like, whatever. And then you wouldn't hear from them for like a couple weeks or months or whatever. And then they just come back and all that stuff. So yeah, like you're right. It is probably something to that degree. Well, like that was influencer marketing, I would say. But at the same time, like at least from my perspective, I don't know how it is with like, from other outlets, like, when they receive product, how they perceived it. At least for me, when I got stuff or when I would like, talk about like, I never let those things kind of influence like whether I think
Your
something was
opinion.
good or bad. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, no, that's totally fair. And I mean, I think it's always been, I mean, one, I just like I said, like I'm not say like a big video game guy
Mm-hmm.
or like a car guy, or I'm trying to think of like other consumer goods, if you will, that are not just like there's a difference, obviously, not to say that there isn't sway behind the scenes in any of this stuff, but like if you're covering politics, you know what I mean, unless you were like a political influencer, you know what I mean, which I'm sure is probably a thing that's not really my realm or whatever. I
Mm-hmm.
think because of the severity of the topic or it would just be considered journalism. You know what I mean?
Right.
If you're covering music, because it is, while it's consumable art, especially in the streaming era or whatever, it's kind of, you can say, hey, this album's great, this album sucks. I think they're cool. They're not to say that they probably aren't getting push from record labels, PR companies, whatever, but there is a maybe like an innate objectivity or whatever, where it's like I don't know if you're like a really good car vlogger, if like you're getting sent free whips or whatever, you know what I mean? I don't know
Right.
how
Right.
that, if you're a big gamer, I'm sure EA, Activision or whatever is sending stuff, but I do think that um journalism, I'd say probably, the marketing, a bit for sure, but I really just think storytelling, like, and not to
Mm-hmm.
sound cliche, because I think storytelling can kind of be, I don't know, overblown, you know what I mean? Or, and can be like that. But I do think that, I mean, yeah, I think you can say the same. Like, we've had to cover events that were awesome. We've had to cover events that suck. You know what I mean? We've had to cover hard news that is great. We've had to cover hard news that was terrible. So,
Yeah.
like, I think it's all. I think it's journalism if you treat it like a craft. You know what I mean? Like
Sure.
if you're, like actually researching stuff, you're putting your own thought and time into it, you're getting other opinions, you're, sitting with something before you just react. But yeah, some of it is just product reviews. A lot of it is just like, I don't know, I guess like and I'm not as for a writer, I'm probably not very good at like definitions and stuff like that, but maybe because I studied marketing and not journalism.
I see. Mm.
But yeah, for better or worse, I think it gives a different lens. But like if somebody works for, say, how like every neighborhood or like city, they have those like community impact, like kind of like paper newspapers that are like once a month, whatever. And it's like, hey, this restaurant opened, this restaurant closed. These are what's on like the voting ballot. These are the events at the library, whatever, whatever. Is that journalism? Because I'd say probably yes, you know what I mean? It's maybe not like New York Times, like deep dive or whatever, but they're alerting
Right.
people what's going on, what changes are happening and stuff like that. And I mean, for footwear, we did the same thing, like
Right.
I mean, I don't, telling something, there was a time where like, oh, you actually had to know when things came out and where you could get them. Otherwise, you were SOL, and not that that's like, curing cancer or anything like that. But it it was informing people for sure.
Right, right. And I think another thing that I think about it too is like the chasing the authenticity. Like
Hmm.
when you're talking to when you're looking at like people online and you're like, looking at who should I follow, who should I like, pay attention to. People really kind of have to like look and see whether the person has an authentic voice at the end of the day
Sure.
too, is like, and that takes time. It's not something you can kind of just figure out like immediately after like following a person for like a day or whatever, or watching one video. Oh, this person's somebody I can trust. It's something that they kind of have to like earn over time. Like, if you watch like one Nightwing video, you might think, oh, this person's got like takes and everything, but you kind of just have to like watch them over time and see how they evolve and really kind of get a feel for what they're doing. Because I don't know if it was like Jacques or Nick who talked about it, but Nightwing is kind of someone who would be, who would consider like, journalism, because he's doing like actual product reviews. I mean, he has worked with like, brands before, like, actually like produced actual sneakers and everything, but he is someone who doesn't necessarily have like a filter. Like, he'll call stuff out, and that's what I consider like an authentic voice. That kind of like, channel, or because when you look at like the blogs today, it's like, well, you've got like, you still got Nice Case, you got Kicks on Fire, you got like House of Heat and all that stuff, and sometimes I'll look on there and I'm like, where are like the features, where are those kinds of things? It's not necessarily always there. Like, Matt will still put up stuff every once in a while, but it's not the same. Like, unlike the YouTubers and all that stuff, who are like just out there, like, kind of putting their own take on these kinds of things.
Yeah, I mean it's different for sure. I mean, I think that one, I mean, not rank Chris is as authentic as it gets, you know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
I know man, he's always stood on what he's believed. He's played hardball when he needs to, and like, yo, the dude really hoops. Like,
Yeah.
like he's not just like BSing or saying something's good or bad because some trivial, like he really means it. You know what I mean? So I've always, granted, I've been traveling for a while, so I haven't seen him lately, but always really liked him in what he does. And I do think that the stuff does still live just in different ways. I mean, I think what Caleb, Goodberger does with his own account and like Nice Kicks Vault. I think those are just visual versions of similar stuff we did. And I mean that in a new way, to give him his
Hmm.
props. Like, is very well researched. I learned stuff or see stuff I've never seen. I think even to a degree with Complex going back to list and stuff, like it's maybe it's maybe like a more on the nose way of like storytelling per se, but like if you really dive into it, you're gonna say, oh well, this is why somebody thinks this is better than that, or these are the things that matter. So I think that the feature now is probably more like either an Instagram gallery or it is somebody's kind of homemade YouTube documentary, which
Yeah.
either of those can go real right or go left. I mean, it ain't like, we ain't seen, an outlet, when we were doing stuff, say like the Jordan 60 Plus was like the 17th greatest basketball shoe of all time, you know what I mean? So,
Wait, did that
so
actually happen?
yeah, yeah, I don't think they had it that high. I'm not gonna say who or whatever, but and I don't hate that shoe or whatever, you know what I mean? That's not like a sig on that, but there's always gonna be revisionist history, you know what I mean? There's always gonna be people chasing a thing that gets hot. And even I don't know if it's as true now as it was, say, like 15 years ago when we were doing it,
Hmm.
but I always said that it's like, 15 years ago, a 15-year-old, which is nuts to think they're a 30-year-old now.
Ugh.
But
Ugh.
like they knew a whole hell of a lot more about Penny Hardaway than I knew about Dr. J. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And a lot of that was the storytelling we did. A lot of that was the storytelling Nike did. You know what I mean? Through product. And a lot of
Hmm.
that is the convergences of somebody like Wale, you know, coming up as a rapper and making phone posits and pennies hot on a mass level and the
Yeah.
kind of trickle down of that. But I don't know if that new 15-year-old today knows as much about um I mean, it's tough to say because like Kevin and Russ and LeBron and Steph, they're all still playing now. You know what I mean? And
Right.
still like
Yeah.
pretty
Yeah.
outsized impacts. But like if they know about D Rose like that, you know what I mean? Or if they, and granted, D Rose at his height was, I mean, he was MVP. Obviously, Penny made numerous first team All NBAs. Like he was a fucking
Yeah.
killer. You know what I mean? But
Hmm.
maybe didn't have the marketing or footwear impact quite as Penny. But it's like I don't know if it's odd because like there is an appreciation for like retro and vintage fashion and Y2K and stuff. I don't know if there's the same like nerd out know it all type thing or whatever, but you know, that's not necessarily a bad thing. I don't know. You know, it's good to be in the moment and not live in the past, but
Right.
yeah, when it does come to like research and deep dive and stuff like that, um maybe a bit of a lost art, but you know, just different formats, different platforms.
I think part of that is because kids today just have access to everything. Like they just, it's kind of like the Spotify thing, right? Like people don't go on, they don't listen to albums anymore. They just like pick so and so. And if they find like an old artist that they like, say they like Stevie Wonder, they'll just pick like they'll go to a playlist and just pick Stevie Wonder's, best hits. They won't necessarily go through like a specific Stevie album and like find something like a deep cut, like somebody that
Sure.
knows really pay attention to. Now everybody, and when you look at sneakers, people are just like when they go back to Penny Hardaway, they'll think the blue foam posits, a very specific pair of like the Penny ones. They don't know about like the ones that like that just fell under the radar or something like that. And when you look at D Rose, it's interesting like how he's going to be remembered like in the long term and everything. Like people are going to look at his MVP season and they're going to look at like certain shoes. And it's interesting because like you don't really necessarily hear any stuff about like how wild it was during that time when he got hurt, how everybody was kind of just dogging Adidas and all that stuff. That stuff has
Yeah.
kind of faded away. But I don't know like how his shoes are going to be remembered in the long term, although it's interesting that they are kind of there was that news where like he's sponsoring like a high school now, and I
Yeah,
feel
yeah. Send
like
him back home, I believe. Yeah.
yeah, yeah, and I think it's interesting that brands are now kind of taking this path with like big time signature athletes where they're sponsoring high schools. Maybe we'll see a point where like Derrick Rose, like his brand might be like on a college team at some point. Like the long tail of some of these athletes, I think is going to be really interesting to see, and like how kids react to that. Like they're gonna be like, oh, what's this? What's this Rose logo, right? And go, let me go look that up, and they're only ever going to see like the D Rose highlights. They're probably never going to see like the struggle. They're never going to see like the Knicks days, the Minnesota days. They're always just going to see prime D Rose, and I just think it's going to be wild to see like how these athletes from like the 2010s, like Derrick Rose, Damian Lillard, and those kinds of I like those Adidas guys, like how they're going to be remembered. Like are they going to be? Are we going to look at them the same way that we looked at like the Penny from back in the days, like Scottie Pippins and all that stuff? I wonder how that's going to play out.
Yeah, you know, that's a great question. I mean, I hope so because I like those guys. I think that one, I mean, if kids go back 10 years and look at D Rose and all they got is the highlights, I think they'll be absolutely fine. It's going to be, you know, people are going to have to be playing on rollerblades or have metal legs like grandma's boy, man, to make those highlights, you know, aged out. I mean, it's crazy. Even I was rewatching maybe like a 2011 game or something, or like his like MVP season, like cut up on YouTube, and it's like, damn, no wonder he got hurt, man. I've never seen
Yeah,
somebody like cutting that hard every play. You know, I mean, he was going
there
at
was a
it, but
violence. There was a violence to the way he would cut. Right, it was just,
100%, yeah,
and
it
people would
was.
compare him and Russ, and I'm like, no, the Russ and Derrick Rose played very differently. Like,
Yeah, they were both, as my buddy Albert said, kind of that first of the era of like contortionist point guards.
yeah, yeah.
But yeah, I think that like
D Rose kind of took it to a different level, though. I
yeah,
think.
it was like he had like chainsaws on his feet, just like going up the hardwood. Where Russ was definitely like crazy north south.
Yes, yes.
But yeah, I mean, I think you know, actually, you know, I ran into my old boss Matt at a Nike event a couple months back, and he made a great point. He's like, you know, and this isn't even like talking down. He's like, you know, when we were growing up, like, if I wanted a pair of OG Air Bacons, you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Like, my only chance other than being like the luckiest guy ever at like a Goodwill or a secondhand store was like buying them off somebody on like ISS or Nike Talk,
Mm-hmm.
sending them a money order, not knowing if that shit was ever gonna come. And like,
Exactly. Yeah.
I say this shoe and that thing because it's a real thing that pretty much happened. I might have like pulled fee the last minute, and that was your only chance at everything. So not only did retro like quench that like appetite for like childhood or nostalgia or whatever else, like to, overabundance, like the brands are smart, about not leaving any money on the table. The generation today has grown up on StockX and a more verified eBay and things like that. So like truly nothing is unattainable. You know what I mean? Like
Mm-hmm.
the only things that are unattainable are like mags or like Tiffany Forces or Red Octobers. Like even though you still can, like things that just from like a price or a clout level are like insane because even, I mean, like, the Kyrie stuff from the 2010s, you know what I mean? Kobe, KD, Bron, you name it, like, you can pretty much, like, if you wanted if I wanted a size 10 and a half, Lucky Charms, Kyrie, I think it was the four or whatever,
Mm-hmm.
like I could find it in 5 minutes. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like it might be a few hundred more dollars than I'd be personally willing to pay. You know what I mean? But like
Yeah.
it's not entirely unachievable. And at the same point too, even if it was, I could theoretically sell four pairs of shoes I have for 100 each and have $400 to get them. You know what I mean? So
Right. Right.
there's not really that like holy grail chase anymore. Instead, I mean, to the brand's benefit, the Holy Grail chase is kind of the next one, the next one, the next one,
Mm-hmm.
um, which isn't the worst thing, you know what I mean? I think it's good to live in the moment or the future and not always the past, but it is very different for sure.
Right. So, what do you think about that? We are kind of like in this era where nothing is necessarily like sacred anymore. Like,
Hmm.
last year we got the Wu Tang Dunks, and apparently this year we're getting undefeated fours. And what was the other one? I think it was like what the Kobe eights, and like there are just a handful of like grails, quote unquote grails, that are coming back. And for me, I think it's great. Like, and it gives like the younger generation like opportunity to own them. And in case of Wu Tang Dunks, it gives us an opportunity to own them. I didn't end up getting a pair. Eventually, I might get one on StockX or whatever, but that's not the point. The
Seriously.
point, but the point is like we finally get a chance to own them. But there is still like this certain segment of whether they're older or younger, they're like, man, nothing's sacred anymore. Like there's definitely like the school of thought of like nothing is ever going to be not necessarily like in terms of like because there's going to be these people who say nothing's sacred anymore in terms of like, oh man, I have this very special shoe that's worth X amount of dollars. Now the value is going down. I'm not talking about those because whatever money, whatever the value of that shoe goes up and down, whatever. I don't really care. But there is like the certain segment who's like, oh man, like there's a reason why this shoe was a grail. There's a reason why this shoe was so special, but now you're bringing it back. Maybe it's not going to have the same quality, or there's reasons. But how do you feel about that though? Like that particular like mindset where it's like, why bring them back? Like why bother bringing them back? Like why can't some things be sacred? Why can't some things be just grails and just leave them in the past kind of thinking.
Yeah, I mean, I think it does prove that we're all much like we're all subject to the law of gravity. I think we're all a little bit more subject to the law of supply and demand than we'd like to think. It does change stuff. I think that I don't hate stuff coming back. You know what I mean? Like I have a career off shoes coming back. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? So like,
Yes.
if there was never a retro or anything back, we'd be maybe talking to each other on LinkedIn or something, you know what I mean? Like looking for a gig, like it wouldn't be the same.
Yeah.
But however, with that said, it does feel like a little much at times, and I think that honestly, I mean, I think the way that, prior to, kind of retro rehash of like the SB dunks, like, late 2010s, early 2020s or whatever. like, when they were first kind of like heating it back up, like Complex Con and stuff like that. I thought what they did with the Delas with like flipping the lows and the highs and stuff like that, like, I think that's a really tasteful way to do it. You know what I mean? So,
Mm-hmm.
like, I'm happy that, I never in a million years thought that I would have a pair of linen Air Force Ones for less than retail and would have
Yeah,
gotten them off StockX. You know what I mean? Like, it's just
exactly.
like, bizarre world for me, but it's like, and I mean, I've worn them a handful of times and I like them. I'd probably, in my head, look at them with higher regard if they never came back and I got the Kith pair or I got an original pair. In reality, I'd probably wear them the same amount of times, you know what I mean? Or like
Yeah.
pretty close to. But, maybe there's a world where if that's, a pink upper with a tan swoosh, it hits different. You know what I mean? Maybe it hits harder. I'm sure there'd be a lot of people that be,
Yeah.
oh, we just want the old thing back or whatever. You know what I mean?
Right.
Maybe if it's a, if it's an orange with army olive accents, undefeated for maybe that's the way, and not like I'm not like spitting the world's most creative ideas here right now, but I do think there's a way to pay homage to the past without
Mm-hmm.
like just doing it dead on, you know what I mean?
Right.
But
Right.
I also think that the irony is like we obviously came up in an era where like it was sacrilegious to like the blocking on the infrared sixes to be wrong. You know what I mean? Like on the
Yeah.
midsole or the cut or the shape of something and the materials or God forbid a glue mark or not having 3M mesh on a 13, which and I'd beat down those same doors too. But like on the flip side, it's like there are going to be people who it's like, yo, me personally, I'd probably rather have a 2001 Jordan 1 cut wise than a 1985. You know what I mean?
Right. And
Or
that's
than
a
a
big topic of
2015.
discussion right now. Yeah.
Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
and like maybe that just makes me like a snob or a hipster trying to be weirdo or whatever, but like there's that shape maybe just registers more with me. So like I do think, and this is just a couple random tangents, I do think there's a world where like Jordan Brand will be able to bring back a, Air Jordan 11, Concord, 2000. I'm blanking if there's 2000 to 2000. Yeah, 2000 I think is when
Yeah. I
they
think. Yeah.
um, yeah, I know I'd totally be like hating myself 10 years ago if I was listening to this. Like, don't know, but like, or there are going to be people, my buddies, I've heard my buddies on the Kicking It podcast say this that like they're going to like the 2013 shape of the three better than the 88 or whatever just because that was their first three. That's like how they
Mm-hmm.
see it in their eyes. So I think that could eventually happen. And I also think too that there might be a world where just with like global warming and environmental rights that, being the thing where it's all vegan sneakers, vegan retros, you know what I mean?
Yep.
Like, and it's almost, it's like wearing a fur coat if you got leather shoes on, like, I
Yeah.
don't know, and again, I say this not with a dog in the race or a wish or a feel on any of that. I'm not super researched, but I do think that even then, there's still ways to. I don't know. I don't know. There's gonna be like a vegan, PlayStation Air Force or whatever, But
Oh, right.
like,
That was the other one. That was the other one. Is the PlayStation
yeah,
is
I think Brendan,
reportedly supposed to come back.
I believe
Yeah.
it's Brendan, yeah, confirmed that those aren't coming back. Which it's funny. On the flip side, I really like to have a pair of those. Like I said, I'm not even a gamer like that. I just always thought that was a sick shoe.
Oh, they're not coming
Um,
back. Oh, I did not. I missed that.
yeah, I
Brendan confirmed
believe
it.
that's
Oh.
yeah. Forgive me, I need to fact check, but
Oh, it's okay. It's all right.
and yeah, and for what it's worth too, I think Brendan and Welty, I think they do a great job of sneaker journalism. I think any like man, if people think something ain't journalism, then they probably just aren't reading it. And if it's really
That's
not, then it's probably not worth your time to critique because, like, who cares? Kind of keep it pushing.
there you go. Right. I mean,
But
there's that too, right? Like you find the sources that you trust, you find the sources that you rock with, and you stick with that. Like it's tough to just make a blanket statement like sneaker journalism is dead when there's like all sorts of different places you can go to, all sorts of different like sources like YouTube videos or like certain Instagram accounts or what Welty and like Brendan do at Complex, right? Like there's so many different places you can search for where you can find the sneaker journalism that you're looking for.
Oh
I
yeah,
think
there's an information overload. You know what I mean? It ain't hard to find
a little bit too much too.
anything
Yeah.
ever. You know, and I think
Yeah.
it's like, I was talking to Nick DePaul about it the other day, and it's like, I remember when we were, I guess maybe like late teens, early 20s or whatever, and like the first round of like streetwear guys were like growing up. So it's like suddenly Huff has like cut and sew stuff and like more elevated things. And when you're a certain age, you're kind of like, yeah, just how about like a graphic tee? Like that's what I like. You know what I mean? And obviously a lot of those brands reverted to that, but it's like there is that thin line of like I'm growing up, I want my consumer and or my community or whatever to grow up with me, and also not being like, yo, I'm 45 and still trying to dress like a 16-year-old. You know what I mean? Like
Right.
there's or like talking the lingo that's not really authentic to one anymore. So um but yeah, I mean, I will say this. I mean, there ain't no shortage of anybody and everybody wearing, shoes and consuming the same way we consumed, 15, 20 years ago, and it was like a weird or abnormal thing. It's like, man, I feel like every dad I know is like more on the apps or getting stuff than me. You know what I mean? Which
Yeah.
is fine. I'm not mad at it, but it's yeah, I don't know. I don't know where it's going next. I'd probably be sitting in a more comfy chair if I did, but we'll see.
That's true. That's true. Well, what do you think about though, like the state of like sneakers, like current sneakers at the moment, like stuff that's not necessarily like retro, but like, is there anything right now that you're looking at it like, oh, that's an interesting like model or something like that? Like I look at, I guess this week is going to drop the Pegasus Premium, and I remember Jacques was in Paris to try those on for the first time, and he was like really sold on it. And I look at that, and I'm like, oh, so I've never really looked at like the Pegasus for any reason really. Like when I run in Nikes, I prefer like the what was it, the Lunars? I forget what it's called, but like the Lunar Glides or something like that. But I've never really looked at the Pegasus in that sort of way. And I look at the premium, and I'm thinking to myself, oh, that could be a shoe that transcends. Maybe
Sure.
becomes like just because of like the shape of the air unit, like. And I look at that, and I'm like, oh, so that's like that could be like the first time in a long time that Nike has like a new model that could really be a standout. Like, is there anything that you're seeing right now, like that kind of like catches your eye that's new, like a new model or per se?
So the Pegasus Premium, I just want to make sure because I know there's like a billion Pegasi, if that's the right way to put it,
Right, right, right.
out there. But that's the one with like the 360 like visible zoom and like
Yes,
the kind of like shades of like platinum and orange.
yes, yes, yes. That one, yeah.
I got a pair of those. That's actually where I ran into Matt. It was at this Nike run
Oh,
event.
okay.
Yeah, so I've
Oh,
been wearing them. I've been like, I hadn't ran probably since like 2014 when my doctor was like, yo, if you want to keep hooping, like, probably get all those miles on the hardwood and, ride the exercise bike instead of, being a runner. So I hadn't ran in forever. Man,
mm-hmm.
no paid endorsement. I was like, I don't know if I'm gonna be getting a cramp after 5 steps or whatever. Man, I ran in those, felt great. And I
Oh,
haven't
okay.
ran in them since because, like I said, running's just
Not in the cards.
I'm gonna have to reach another level of dad life for running to be the cardio or stress manager of choice. But they're fantastic. And I'll attest that like when I first saw that Olympic preview, I wasn't really wowed by anything. You know what I mean? Like it did not feel like 2008. You know what I mean? Or like some of these other kind of watershed years, even like 2012 with like Hyperfeel and like
Yeah, yeah.
some of the stuff that just felt like kind of like either entirely new tech or like new mutations of previous existing tech. And it's like, Zoom is sexy, but not like audacious. You know what I mean? It's not
Right.
like,
Mm-hmm.
and like the Pegasus line has never been like one that spoke to the masses in a cool way, in
Right,
my
right.
opinion. But man, I
Mm-hmm.
think it's a great shoe. You know what I mean? Like I was on a bachelor party and I was like, what can I wear when I'm just walking around Vegas and stuff like that? Warm the whole time. So I like those. Again, I don't, candidly, I don't think I would have gone out and bought them otherwise just because that's not my, I'm pretty much all basketball per se.
Hmm. Hmm.
Basketball and sandals, almost it is these days. And then, some of my wear on a date night. But I actually went out and got, I'm blanking on the name, which makes me a very bad sneakerhead and know-it-all.
Ah.
But the new Nike, the Etiquette pack with like the flames on it.
Oh, okay, okay, yeah.
Yeah, I
Uh-huh.
got the $180 joint, so not the Vapor Flies, which I had a pair of
Hmm.
those, and I like those. Those are really cool. The Adidas Super Shoes great too. Like I'm two thumbs up to Super Shoes. Like I do think that like running where there is real competition from like challenger brands and stuff like Nike, Adidas, and Puma are doing some sick stuff in that, and I think that's like a more exciting performance and lifestyle crossover space probably than like hoops or skate or anything right now, or even like
Right.
high fashion. But yeah, I got a pair of those. I still haven't worn them yet. But tried them on, super comfy. So I think the running stuff's exciting. I think that performance basketball is better than it gets credit for right now. I mean, there's not a. I mean,
Do you
hopefully,
think there? Do you think the talk about the lull though? There was like, there's always been this talk of like, oh, basketball shoes were like dead for so long, and now it's kind of like starting to come back up. Do you feel like there really was a lull, or do you feel like it was just kind of like, it had its up and downs, but it was never really like there was never like a dead phase or anything like that. What do you think?
That's a great question. I think two things happen. I think Nike and I'd say probably like Adidas or the other brands for that matter probably chased denim too hard. So like once you had all that stuff, because it's funny, like obviously like, and God bless the dead, like Kobe's are still very popular, you know what I mean? And they seem to have more of like a rollout, but I mean like Kobe's were just for like Hoopers or like diehard Lakers fans or like, like the proud people in the Philippines who always rocked with him and his stuff. Like,
It's like you're speaking to me, Ian, like
uh,
Laker fan, Filipino,
hey,
all those things. I was like, is he talking about me?
I'm calling a spade. I was one, maybe two out of three, on a good day or whatever. And I loved, the Kobe 4, Kobe 5, really more the 5. And like in that stuff, and it restored a feeling for me in the original days. But it's like it was because it was a great shoe to plant. You know what I mean?
Yes,
Like
absolutely.
even in my like streetweariest of streetwear days, I was never like gonna try to like flip a Kobe casually. You know what I mean? Like,
Hmm.
I, you know, I,
Hmm.
I'm sure, I've done it. You know what I mean? But that was never the intention. And it's like, and even now, I'm not really sure if like, I mean, maybe in California because it's always been different there in terms of love for him. Like, I don't know
Yeah.
if you're like seeing people like wear reverse Grinches with jeans. You know what I mean? Or joggers or Jinko pants. Or whatever's popping now. But I think that like that to me, the whole kind of like delineage or whatever is like, you know, obviously like 80s, 90s, Jordan era, signature explosion, all that stuff. 2000s, Nike gets kind of low, street ball gets hot, Iverson has a crazy run or whatever. And really, what was kind of like the turning point is like they put a full Air Max sole on the LeBron or Zoom Max on the LeBron 7,
Hmm.
patent leather mud guards, so you're tickling the fancy of all the Jordan, OGs or
Yep.
whatever. Now it's in $160 shoes, so it's a bit of a status symbol. Then, right after that, like, you have the Hyper Dunk and the Kobe stuff, like edging the innovation. Kevin gets a signature shoe. You're starting to have colorways and storytelling, and it all gets so robust that I mean, there's President's Day PEs and colorways and stuff, and everything's a holiday, to sell a
Everything's
shoe.
out.
And I think by the mid 2010s, there was fatigue of that. Um, Even though LeBron watch I think was exceptional, even though I don't really like love the 15 like that, I was just killer. So like suddenly you're not even having all-star colorways, you know what I mean? Like,
Yeah. Hmm.
and I think there was kind of a lull there. Even though like quiet as kept, like the Kyrie stuff was crushing commercially, but that was almost the thing that ruined it. And I love Kyrie, I love the Kyrie line. Kyrie's an amazing player, but it's like when you could storytell so much through colorway or collaboration and not design, it was tough to feel like and again, maybe I'm just speaking from the 8-year old, 12-year old, mind that it's like, yo, the Shacknosis feels like Shack. Like it's big, it's outsized. Like
Yeah.
the Penny 2 feels like Penny. Like it's fluid, it's electric, it's vibrant, but there's still a calmness to it that once you could just kind of story tell merely with color palettes or things like that, I think some of the creativity and the design got a little dull. I think
Mm.
that once everybody was a sneakerhead, which is fine. I'm not, again, I wouldn't have a job if they weren't. You know what I mean? It was like, well, I'm going to spend $200 on Union Jordan 1s or some foam posits. So I really only got 80 to 110 to spend on my hoop shoes. So I'm just gonna ball in some Giannis, takedowns or a Dame or Kyrie for 110, and that became the like North Star price point. And I think just everything got, and then the Kobe passing happened, and then that caught on fire. So everything's a low topper made in the image of Kobe, and I think that just kind of, I think all those things kind of stifled it. I also think too that, there's probably 5 people ever that really deserve a new signature shoe every year. You know what I mean? Like,
Oh,
and
okay.
I'm not anti-innovation, but I do just think that like putting everybody on the Michael Jordan model is probably not sustainable for most.
Hmm.
And I think too that it's like, because I was thinking about it today when I was, apparently SGA is going to have a really nice shoe. I haven't seen it yet, but I'm hearing really good things. But
Oh, okay, okay.
how cool would it be if like, whoever it is, like it could be SGA, Book, Ant, LaMelo, and all these guys that are existing in the space. Probably wouldn't be one of them because they already have good businesses going on. But like one really sick shoe, maybe even at an exorbitant price point. Because I mean, you think about it, inflation adjusted, not that the foam posit crushed retail in 97, but like 180 and 97 is like, I don't
Yeah.
know, man, maybe $400 or $500 now. I'd have to do the math, you know what I mean? And
Yeah.
but like if there was just like somebody kind of had the audacity to make a singular, like one colorway, like such an eye catcher that you could wear it 82 games a year and it'd still be like, man, those are different. You know what I mean?
Mm.
And do something like that. I think that would be interesting because I do think when everybody has 15 to 20 colors of a shoe, it it kind of waters it down. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
So that's my opinion. That's also an unpopular opinion. I doubt any brand would want to do that.
Just
And
one
even too,
shoe, yeah.
sometimes the brands that do a great job of like, man, the Air Jordan 28 was phenomenal, but like people were probably not willing to shell out 225 or whatever it was for flight plate technology. Like,
Yeah.
so, things change. But I don't know. I mean, what's your take on like the basketball shoe market right now?
I think it's in a better place than it was like, during that lull, like during like the mid 2010s to like the late, 2010s. And
Hmm.
like, I feel like Anthony Edwards kind of had a lot to do with it, but like the
Right.
design itself was, audacious and it was definitely different. It also had to do with like the fact that he balled out. That was like the
For
perfect
sure.
time. That was his breakout era and everything. So, and it's also interesting that with the AE2, there was a leak. There was a leak of the AE2, and I don't know where they scrapped it or not. But then there's another AE2 leak, and that feels like more in line with what maybe people are hoping for. But at the same time, it's like, how long has it been? So I think like the AE1, I think we talked about this in the show last week. Like it debuted, what was it, December 2023. We're now in January 2025. Like it's a pretty long run for a
For
signature
sure.
shoe. I remember KD, I forget which KD it was. It was like, it felt like it was like 6 months, and then here's the new KD. Like I remember during like that era where it was like, I think it was like the KD 5 or 6 or something, where the KD 4 was such a huge hit. The KD 5 comes
Yeah.
out, and then like within a couple months, here's the KD 6, and I'm like, what happened? What? Oh, do we not even have a time to like really enjoy the KD's, KD 5? But with the AE1, it feels like they're stretching it out, and I think it was like Jacques also said, like, why can't it be that way? Why can't, like, if the shoe's still selling, if it's still successful, if people are still like, down for it, why not just keep selling it? Why do we have to keep going on? Like you said, like the Jordan model, where it's like there's a new shoe every season, new year, new Jordans or something like that. But if the AE1 is successful, why not just keep that ball rolling until like the wheels fall off, or you know delay it or at some point, or and maybe it's the same thing with the book one. Although the reception, at least on the internet, seems to be like the book one is like the worst shoe ever.
I
You
love
kind
them.
yeah, that's the thing is I
Yeah.
think I appreciate them too. It's not necessarily like my favorite, but I do appreciate. I see what they were going for, and I thought it was pretty good. But when you go online, you see any post, it's always like, oh, this is terrible. They just like it was just like very inspired by retro, which is boring and all that stuff. And I'm like, but this is what you guys wanted. Pre-release, the hype for the book one was huge, and then when it came out, it was like, oh, what happened? Like all of a sudden, there was like this huge shift. And the same thing with the book one. It's like we don't even like I think Booker has confirmed that there's going to be a book two, but we still haven't seen it. And I think they came out around the same time, the AE1 and the book one. So like I think maybe having signature shoes have like longer shelf lives, especially like like obviously like sales will determine that too. But like I think that's maybe the way moving forward is like having these like signature shoes, having like longer runs than in the past where it was like a year to 6 months or something. Or like I think it was like was it Steph who had like 2.5, 3.5s and like half step shoes for like a couple years there, and they were kind of dropping it like in between seasons, and it got to a point where like it felt like he was dropping like a new signature shoe every like twice a year. So
Yeah, he
that's why
was.
these are yeah, so that's why we're at the what is it the 12 now, right?
Yeah, the 12, yeah.
and and I think what is this around the time when like the Curry one like 10 years ago came out? Like was it 2015 when the Curry ones came out or something like that?
Yeah,
So
14 or 15. I'm drawing a
yeah,
blank.
yes.
But yeah, that window for sure.
Yeah, definitely. So I don't know what the strategy for that with Under Armour worked out or not, but I feel like maybe this is probably the way moving forward is like having these signature shoes. As when you're talking about like SGAs, maybe if his shoe is like hot out the gate, they think about like it having like a long shelf life or something like that, where they consider like maybe this is a shoe that's good for 2 seasons or a season and a half or something. Like I feel like that should be like the way moving forward is like not being beholden to like a calendar, like a schedule, like let's kind of, and obviously business wise and like logistics, like it makes it hard to like really like do that, but maybe they have like a plan, like contingencies for like if the shoe's hot, let's just keep that ball rolling. If it kind of we kind of see like things kind of peter off, then we kind of introduce the new thing.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I think, like you said, I do think it's probably like the business or like, kind of a C-suite stuff or like shareholders and planning and things that, it's always easier to plan. It's always easier to make projections when you got a plan. You know what I mean?
Right. Mm-hmm.
And if you're gonna go off a model, like the annual Air Jordan one's been a pretty good one. So like, I understand that, but yeah, I'm with you. I think that. Honestly, yeah. I mean, I think there's something to being both being patient and reactive. You know what I mean? I think that you're
Right.
absolutely right. Like, I think the A1 steam is starting to let off, even though, man, I'll be damned if I don't see a new colorway and I'm like, shit, those look really good
Yeah.
still. Um,
And I see kids wearing them. Like that's the thing too. Is like I see kids here in California wear them. Like that's probably the most common basketball shoe I've seen in the past probably 8 months. Like
well, that's
if you're at the
killer.
mall or something. Obviously, like when you see like kids on playing hoop, I've seen the AE ones. I've seen the Kobe's obviously. But
Hmm.
like in casual wear, I've seen more kids in the AE ones more than I've seen any other basketball shoe really. Like modern, because you still have your Jordans and all that stuff. But
Sure.
like in terms of like modern basketball shoes, the kids here probably the AE ones is the one I've seen the most.
That's awesome. Yeah, I mean, I used to coach youth ball, so I was a little bit more in the scenes of seeing what people were wearing and stuff. But
Mm-hmm.
yeah, I mean, I think the A1, like I remember like when they did that black and kind of like marble gray, like low top one in August, I was like, yo, that's a phenomenal back to school shoe. You know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
you have some easy DNA, it's super durable. Like a kid gets that first day of fourth grade, like they're gonna be good up to Christmas for sure. You know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
so I love I mean they knocked it out of the park obviously with the marketing. Like I said, not my personal favorite shoe to plan,
Mm-hmm.
little high off the ground for me, not a great last, but like I've got buddies who are they built a little different or stockier than me and they love them. You know what I mean? So like, I think, to each their own, but killer shoe, probably time for the two now. I think people are ready for that. I think that, yeah, I'd let the book one cook, man. I think it's a good shoe. I think it's got good storytelling. But honestly, again, like, I think that we obviously have like a different or more discerning hat being older now than when we were younger. You know what I mean? It's just
Yeah,
we see
yeah.
stuff differently. But I do think what was really good about the 90s is not only was there a lot of playing talent, not only was there a lot of great storytelling on TV, both through like the broadcast partners or through like the advertising agencies and stuff they're doing. I do think the people that were calling the shots were like, hey, um, this shoe we made for Penny, like, sorry, we got to give it to Garnett. You know what I mean? And I don't know for sure on all that stuff or whatever. You know what I mean? And I
Right,
love
right.
both those guys, but like, we got to pivot, we got to adjust. You know what I mean? And I think that
Hmm.
it's like, yo, if I think Paul George is a great player, if the PG6 was the Ja one, that shit would have been out of there to me. You know what I mean?
Mm.
Just in terms
Hmm.
of like Ja
Hmm.
rising at his height of heights. You know what I mean? Like, man, I think Giannis is great, and Giannis probably be in contention for another MVP by the end of the year. I'd run back the one and actually make it
Mm.
like an $140 shoe. You know what I mean? I think
Mm.
that one, I mean, you could sell a milk carton with a backward swoosh on it right now. That's the hottest thing in modern culture or whatever. Like
Yes,
that's
yes.
still there's an identifier there. There's a great, Aaron Cooper's, term, great 50-yard read. You know what I mean? Like that shoe is visually striking. I think the freak sense have been cool, but for whatever reason, that consumer would rather spend 80 to $90 on the takedown model. You know what I mean? So like
Right.
I think there's different ways of being a little bit more nimble. I mean, like, yo, the Harden 9 is sick. Like, Jalal, or forgive me if I mispronounce the name. That guy's incredible. You know what I mean? I think that's a dynamite shoe. I also say if that was the Ant 2, the AE2, it would be incredibly out of there too. You know what I mean? Nothing against James. James still
Hmm.
James, and James still hooping. I love that there is a design language, from the 7 to the 8 to the 9. You know what I mean? And like I'm sure the 10 is going to be nuts too. But I do think that there is a way to, shoot. If the Zion 3 or 4 was the SGA 1 a year ago, I
Yeah.
think it would have been out of there, the same. So I think you're right. Like as much as the design, the aesthetic, the marketing was in the player. Ant is one of the most special personalities, talents, the game we've ever had. I mean, there's no coincidence to me that it's like the people that are selling the most shoes right now, in my opinion, Ant, LaMelo, um, blanking. There's somebody else in mind. But you can throw Kyrie in there too. Um, they're not like super PR controlled. You know what I mean? Like even though they
Yeah.
say some stuff sometimes that might not be so great, that I definitely don't co-sign. They're authentic. You know what I mean? And
Yes.
like LaMelo has done some most creative stuff on the court that I've ever seen as a Jay Will stand, and stuff like that. He's reinventing. He's like Jay Will and T Mac in one. You know what I mean? Like he's
Yeah. Hmm.
averaging 30 a night and throwing no look passes off the backboard to himself to tap it to somebody else. And it's like when you have somebody that's doing that, basically taking the whole Nike Kyrie formula for like silhouette and storytelling, and like virally, like somebody catches him driving a go kart on the roof of his penthouse apartment. Like that's so much cooler to a kid, I would think, than being like trying to tell some like deeper overarching story that just ain't gonna resonate. You know what I mean? So
Yeah.
like authenticity and fun, like I think the brands or the athletes that are doing that, like that's what's winning. You know what I mean? Like
Hmm.
respect to the legacy lines too. Like man, you get a Nike KD, like you're gonna be able to hoop in it. Like it's gonna be an awesome shoot. You know what I mean? Like
Right.
LeBron, I'm sure is still getting like no pun intended the lion's share of the tech. You know what I mean? And whatever he wants to do from there. But I think that the new energy, man, is it's making a little fun again. You know what I mean? But
Yeah.
we'll see where it goes next.
Yeah, totally, totally. Well, it's been an hour. It's been a good length for a pod and everything. Ian, I definitely appreciate you coming on the show and everything. Greatly appreciate that. Subbing in for Jacques. Totally appreciate that. So, but
My
before we
pleasure.
go though, yeah, no. So before we go, we like to do this thing. We call it Sneaker Mount Rushmore Plus. We do a whole thing. We kind of talk about like our particular picks for like sneakers and everything. We like pick a certain model and we kind of go for like one OG, one non OG, player exclusive, and all that stuff. But for today, let's kind of do let's switch it up things a little bit though, Ian. Like let's talk about like our time during like the blog era. What would you consider as like your Rushmore of like the sneaker blog era? Like what would you consider as like the shoes that really define like your time necessary your time in the blog era, not necessarily like the whole blog because
Yeah.
there was time before that, there's obviously time after that, but like during your era of like being in that world, what would you consider is like the Rushmore, the shoes that really kind of defined your time in the blog era?
Man, it's gonna make me sound like a hype beast, but it's the truth.
No, 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 absolutely not, man. Like,
Oh,
hey, when we do our stuff, we kind of get wild with it too. So yeah.
hey, I mean it's Galaxy Phone Posit, Easy 2, Easy 750 or that whole like 350 whole Easy Season 1.
Mm-hmm.
Um hmm, Man, let me think.
Yeah, no. So I'm thinking about it too. I probably put the Galaxy foams on there too. Uh, Specifically the Red Octobers, the Red October Yeezys. Um, the Kobe Nines, the Elites, just because of like the story behind that and like then how it like was so audacious from going for like the lows for so long and then just going with like the high cuts and all that stuff for my
Sure.
time. And then just because I like it, the Harden Volume One. Just because of like, I remember I was there for the
Oh shoot.
launch. Yeah, I was there for the launch and Houston and everything, and I just remember that being like just a very special time.
Yeah, Travis
So
performed, right? Travis and Thugger. Was that
yeah,
right?
yeah, yeah. Oh, were you there? I
I
forget.
No, it wasn't Ray. Ray was with us then. He was out there.
Oh, okay,
Um,
okay.
but yeah, I still think that launch colorway, that Pioneer, that black
Yeah, that
with the white
Pioneer.
toe box,
Yes.
man,
Mm-hmm.
killer shoe.
Yeah,
Good at
absolutely
playing
love it.
too.
Yeah, 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 totally. So those are like those are those I consider. But so what was your did you have a fourth? So it was like
Didn't get to a
Galaxy
fourth.
Foams.
I
Yeah.
gotta say, I'm trying to think if it was what were the Cool Grays 2010, like the first time back.
Was it 2010? Oh no! Oh wait, yeah. So Concords were 2011. Was it
Yeah,
Space Jams that
Space
was
Jam
2010?
'09, Cool Grade
Oh,
2010.
yes,
Yeah,
yes. Okay, yeah, yeah,
which was same holiday season as the Grinches and
yeah.
Christmas LeBrons and the bronze ornament KDs, like a great time. I'd say Cool Grade 11s because I think that was the shoe that like got everybody raises. Like the like traffic was so much that like kudos to Matt and Allison. Like like they took care of everybody, if I
Mm-hmm.
remember correctly. And then it's funny. I think about this. There was a day in March. It must have been like March 2011 or 2012.
Uh-huh.
And because it was during South by Southwest, so like in the height of that in the blog era. So like every artist is, in town and come through the Nice Kick shop. But it was just like it was literally like a Tuesday. And it was the Entourage LeBron eights, the Electro Lime or like the I don't know if the electro it was like the bright like neon green, almost like Degeneration X green.
Uh-huh.
Foam Posit Pros. Actually, my brother-in-law had him on at sister's baby shower a couple weeks ago, a six shoe,
Awesome.
and I
Awesome.
think the Rice Kobe sixes,
Mm.
all the same day in like a
All same
random
day.
weekday, and just like full shoes that were, you know, each had good enough like air quote stories. You know what I mean? Like the colorways were fire and fun. You could hoop in them or not hoop in them. You know what I mean? Like people were
Yeah.
actually getting fits off with stuff like that at the time, and anytime you're at a sneaker store and it's a release day and it feels like everybody won, you know what I mean, is a good thing. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
Like it's
totally.
it's a bummer, feeling like, folks went home sad, you know what I mean? Or there's some shenanigans or whatever else. So like that was really cool to me because like that was kind of the peak of like pulling Nike basketball kind of as far as you could off the court or into
Hmm.
collector culture in terms of like it's not an event, it's not a holiday, it's not all star, it's not even a super limited release, but it's like these are connecting with people and people like it. You know what I mean? So
Yeah.
that that for sure. I'd say a couple random sleepers. I was told that when the Fusion 13s leaked, and I want to say when the prices, Ernest Baker used to be a Complex, had a blog, Newborn Rodeo, and he leaked the first like scan sheet of Louis Vuitton, Kanye, collab prices.
Yeah,
That
yeah,
I
yeah.
think like prior to the 2010s, those were the highest traffic days in Nice Kicks history. Like more comments on the Fusion 13s than any post
The
ever.
Fusion
So
13s.
yeah, just because that
Wow.
was such a like I don't know. I don't want to say anything crass, but like seeing like two things fuse that much was definitely like probably jarring on some levels. You know what I mean? And like
Yeah.
you know, yeah, a lot of ways. There's a whole good conversation to be done about fusion sometime.
Oh.
The
I
only
I
other thing. Oh, go ahead.
oh no. I remember one of the times that Jordan Brand I was persona non grata at Jordan Brand was when I wrote a piece that was, I think it was called Mistakes Were Made, and it was basically the whole Jordan Fusion line. I was like, what are we doing here? Blah 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 blah. It was just basically bagging on the entire thing. And famously for people who paid attention, but I am not the biggest fan of the Air Jordan 13s. Just in terms of like overall look and everything. I remember loving the 11s, loving the 12s, and I remember seeing the 13s for the first time. I think I was in, gosh, was it sixth grade or whatever? But I remember seeing it for the first time, and I was like, what the hell is this? So I kind of carry that into like my blog era, and I would always find a way to kind of like throw shade at like 13s. And then when you see the fusions, you're like, oh boy, this is no, 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 no. So when those pieces, like when those things I wrote came out, I remember Jordan Brand not being happy with that, and I was like, whatever. So that's why
It's,
when you mentioned the Jordan, when you mentioned the 13 fusions being specifically like a high traffic day for Nice Case, I was like, what?
I mean, I think they just elicit a lot of reaction. I mean, like, I think they should come back. You know what I mean? I think that honestly, in terms of like resetting some stuff, like a one, I think it would create some energy, I think, in the retro space,
It definitely
and
get people
I
talking.
would probably rather. I think that's maybe even more authentic to like, like a a customer that's like buying Jordans in the mall, maybe more so to buy the logo. You know what I mean? Than like, I mean, I think they call it the remix line or whatever, but like basically Team J's is people in our space would
Hmm.
call and would maybe have a derogatory kind of. I think the early not like late '90s, early Jordan Brand Team Jordans are all fire.
Absolutely. Shout out to the Team
Mid
Jordan 1. That was
yeah,
fire. Yeah.
mid aughts or whatever, or mid aughts to later, maybe not as much in my opinion. But it's like that's $1 billion annual business, and I think that retro would mean more at times if there were maybe less like inline, like GR, or like maybe mall colorways. Not to be like a snob or whatever, but like if there's 30 colors of Jordans, let's say Jordan 13s, and I personally love the 13, or I
Hmm.
wear a little less now. I golfed in 13 cleats recently, so I guess I got that going. But I think to have a 13 Fusion on the wall and maybe elicit some of that energy or whatever is probably more serving to all parties than just doing like a Bengals colorway. You know what I mean? Even if it's like,
Sure, sure.
oh,
Yeah.
well, it's riffing off like a Michael Pietrus P from when he was with the Warriors, and it's like, well, that person probably ain't getting it because of that. But the only other thing I was gonna say in terms of like low key insane traffic day Um, the Big Baller Brand ZO2. The
Ah,
first look and the second look, man, those were behemoth days.
yeah, yeah.
And a little telling of, kind of, the athlete owned brand, stuff that we're seeing now.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But no, blog era, man, was a fun time. I'm grateful to kind of come up in it.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And you're talking about like your high traffic days and nights kicks. I'll tell you the one that really stands out to me with Kicks on Fire that it got to a point where the site actually crashed. It was an April Fool's joke. It was the we decided, well, I decided we should do like the Air Jordan 11 South Beach. And what we did was we just photoshopped it really crudely. It was really bad. And it was basically like the Jordan 11 and South Beach colors. And you know what year was that? Probably like 13 or 14 or whatever. And we did it as an April Fool's joke. I went to NBA 2K. I forget what year that was, and I just like put the colors of the South Beach on there. I think the mudguard was the teal. I forget, but anyways, yeah, no. So we did something like that, and just to really hammer the point home that it was an April Fool's joke. Every sentence, like the first letter, if you look at it, it would spell out April Fool's. Like so the first letter of like the first paragraph, first sentence, it would start with an
Oh
A.
yeah, yeah.
Second letter,
Almost
second
like a
sentence
ransom
P.
letter.
Yeah, kind of like that, right? Like just to really drive the point home. And I'm sure some like some people notice it obviously, but yeah, like I remember getting actual phone calls and like DMs from like people, and they're like, "Yo, is this really happening? Is this?" I checked with some, but I didn't hear from like this is actually happening and all that stuff. And I'm like, "Nah, man, it's April Fools. What are we doing?" But the site crashed. Like, and I think it was down for like a significant amount of time, but like there were just so many people just like really buying it, like really actually believing that it was happening. And it might have been the most popular tweet Kicks on Fire had at the time, like just because of like the sheer amount of people who were like who actually bought it. I was like, it's clearly a joke. Like the Photoshop was really bad. I forget who it was. I think it was one of our interns who made like the Photoshop. I was the one who added the screenshot in 2K just to like kind of as say like, oh, it's also gonna be a collaboration with 2K, like like
Yeah,
they're
like
teasing the
stamp it
shoe
a
and
little bit. Yeah.
yeah. But yeah, I remember doing that, and yeah, no, that day it was Khan. It was like, hey man, let's like, what'd you do? And I'm like, yeah, man, I just thought it'd be funny to do that day. So yeah, so that was a moment that I will always remember, just because of like, I thought it was a really bad joke. I just thought it'd be funny to like, do it, but like I was like, and it was clearly, obviously a joke, but like I had enough people reach out to me to make me feel like, wow, really, people will believe anything at this, like during that time, like because it wasn't out of the realm of possibility that Jordan Brand can make like a South Beach maybe inspired Jordan 11, maybe, who knows, but I just thought it'd be a fun bit to do that day, and yeah, no, the site crashed.
Would you wear South Beach Jordan 11?
During that time, yes. Maybe not now, just because like 11s don't feel great on my feet anymore. But during that time, absolutely. Like it would have been great if we could have gone all the way with it. Like maybe talk to Mosh at that point, and like maybe get like some like if we had actually taken the time to like really put some thought into that joke, and that's something I thought about the day before. We could have gone all the way with it, like
Man,
pretend it's like a leak or something like that, and just go all the way with it. But it's just one of those things that we decided one day before, like, hey, it'd be funny if we did this, and we just kind of put that together, like rough shot, and like, and it just happened the way that it did.
great free idea or pulling from the past, as we sometimes hope Snicker Media would today. For anybody out there doing that, I would love to see. I'm trying. I wonder what would be like the equivalent of that in 2025. That
Oh my
would
gosh. What would be like an equivalent, like a gag, or just like something that could kind of pull the wool, like
like the
really
two
kind of,
worlds colliding, or like theme on said shoe or whatever.
man. I, I don't know why I thought it'd be funny, but like it doesn't even make sense really if I think the more I think about it. But like, what if the joke was like Travis left Nike and went to Adidas and just like reversed the three stripes? I don't even that doesn't even make sense really.
No, for sure. I
But it's
think
like,
that's
yeah, but
yeah.
like
You
wouldn't
do
that
like a
that
superstar or whatever with like the
the
stripes
stripes
the
going
backwards way.
backwards stripes? And I'm like,
That would definitely go viral for sure.
yeah.
Yeah, I
And
was
now
gonna say
that
like a Union Vomero. I don't really think that hits the same. Yeah, I'm
Yeah.
not really sure there's a you're but that's I mean, I'm not like a I couldn't like, look at a black and white image and say what it means somebody's really thinking, but like you really hit the nail right on the head is like obviously in the mid or early 2010s, it was very much about like hot silhouette and like hot colorway. And
Yeah.
now it's much more the closest to like monoculture is like hot influencer and like the
Hmm.
shake up would be like leaving a brand. You know what I mean? Like if
Yeah.
Travis went to a rival brand or started his own or anything like that, that definitely would make a ton more noise, whether fact or fiction, you know what I mean,
Hmm.
than you know, like you know, I can't even think, you know what I mean? There's not
Yeah.
one silhouette that holds the weight in 2025 that the Air Jordan
Yeah.
11 did in 2013, and there's not one colorway that holds the weight in 2025 that South Beach did then. You know what I mean? It's the power
It's the
shifted for
influencer.
sure.
Yeah. Yeah. It's the celebrity. It's that kind of endorsement, that cosign. Like if Kai Cenat, if he was like, I don't know how, yeah, because he does have a deal with Nike, but it's more like it feels like it's like a streaming deal. But if product ever, like, ever came into the equation, like actual product that was endorsed by Kai Cenat, or like, like he had a hand in the design or something, I feel like that would be something that would be, or that could be like, if we were still talking about a gag, that could still be the gag. It's like, the Nike, oh no, it'd be funny if they said that they would, like, if Nike said we're going to continue the Kyrie line and just call it the Kai, and just say the Nike Kai 9, and it's instead of Kyrie it's Kai Cenat. What would it be, the 9? Yeah, but something like that. That
I
would be an
mean,
elaborate gag, but but if they had like a Nike Kai like lifestyle shoe, I think that could be like, I think that would actually do pretty well.
maybe I'm just showing my age, but it seems like Casanat Tech Fleece would be a layup. Um,
Yeah.
like not a
Yeah.
lot of, respectfully, not a lot of like a solid product that registers with an age group and has forever now, and
Hmm.
wouldn't have to do a ton of add-on, but you could do enough to make it fresh. It's too bad the Roche run didn't really have a the second life or the storytelling that one thought it would, because it seems like a uh, very streamer type shoe to me. Even
Hmm.
though like that again shows, man, I'm up in the boonies. Those streamers probably got more designer, nice stuff that I could ever imagine. But
Yeah.
yeah, it's changed a lot. I'm not mad at it, but yeah, I do think figuring it all out and navigating it's interesting. But I would say this is I always think that even when we were in it, there's such a big gap between like the decision makers or like people at brands, you know what I mean? That have like high roles, if you will, and the like 19-year-old guy or gal or whatever that like was like us or even cooler, you know what I mean? That skateboards, listens to every new artist, hoops, like is, tapped in and stuff. Like there's such a big delta between that, you know what I
Yeah.
mean? And I do
Hmm.
think that, whether it's a TikToker or somebody writing with a quill ink pen, you know what I mean? Whoever it is, aside from getting it to people where they're at, is going to be the person that can entertain and educate in a way where they're like kind of speaking for both sides. You know what I mean? And I think
Yeah.
that's what's, I think, a little lost is like it can be such an us versus them or thing or whatever, or the idea of talking down at the youth or vice versa, or the youth like saying, hey, we're kids, like we're supposed to be the ones really into sneakers, not a bunch of freaking 40-year-olds, you know what I mean? And like for sure have a point, you know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
but I think whoever can kind of always weave that needle is gonna be all right. But at the same time too, it's like, it's going to be a billion voices and a billion outlets versus just like a kicks on fire and a nice kicks, like um it's just how it goes.
Yeah. At the end of the day, I think I speak for both of us when we say we're kind of glad we kind of came up in the era that we did, because this era now, I mean, because I'm not super familiar with, like, how everything works and all that stuff, but like seems like it's just there's like the billion voices. There's just so much more competition and so much more stuff. Like, a lot of people doing a lot of good stuff. A lot of people. There's a lot of, but to be fair, there's also a lot of slop out there too. So, yeah, man. Like, I'm kind of glad. The more that I think about, the more that I look back at that time, I'm so glad that I came up in that era that I did. And I'd like to think that a lot of us from that time also kind of feel the same way because like looking at it now, it's like, woo, good luck good luck to the kids out there.
Yeah, you know what I mean? I think, we're blessed too, whether it was, Khan at Kicks on Fire, Matt and Allison at Nice Kicks, or, Steve at Soul Collector, everybody at Complex, or, Dennis Page at Slam back in the day. Like, we came up under people that did have a vision, or like uh, the guts to build a brand,
Yeah.
and I I'm grateful for that because not only did it give me the opportunity to learn and grow and stuff, and find out when I was right or wrong on some things like that. But I do think, as much as it's cool in a way that everybody is their own brand, it's probably a heck of a lot harder to build a brand and sustain a brand, like you said, when there's that much more competition.
Yeah, totally.
And I mean, at the end of the day, it wasn't like we didn't like stuff growing up that made us laugh, or the best days on Nike Talk. Like it was cool when like a Russ or Nick or like somebody a little older than me that had some game would actually like share stories or things like that. But it's probably when like the Jordan 20 leaked, you know what I mean, or when you saw some stuff you didn't think you were supposed to see, and it's gonna be. That's why, like, I mean, I love Z Sneakerheads or House of Heat, you know what I mean, or Sneaker Bar Detroit or whatever. Granted, I follow them more in a passing and social way or discovery page than like going online to read. So I'm, maybe cannibalizing my own industry or space, you know what I mean, and stuff like
Yeah.
that. But like, there's, yeah, I don't know, man. It's. I'm curious to see where it goes next.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely, absolutely. Well, Ian, thank you again for coming on. This is the time where we kind of do the shameless plugs. Where can people find you? Where can people find your work?
Oh, you can just find me at Boardroom. I haven't had anything recently because I've been on paternity leave, but I'll be back in today Monday.
Mm-hmm.
I'll be back
Cool,
in a
cool.
week. So yeah, I'm looking forward to that. Seeing if these fingertips still work. But um, yeah, no, we just had an awesome cover story go that my colleague Vincian wrote about Unrivaled Basketball League.
Mm-hmm.
Shoot, Shlomo doing the sneaker, doing Inside the Boardroom newsletter. Michelet with Tech Talk, Nick with the sneaker game, which is awesome for obviously anybody into footwear. My guy Gabe doing different reels and stuff. So, and that's just like a sliver of the team. We got a bunch of talented folks, but yeah, be writing different culture, storytelling, different pieces there. But if anybody's ever got an idea of anything they'd like to know more about or be written about, hit me up. I'm all ears.
All right. Awesome. Cool, cool. Well, I'm at Juan Martinez. I'm at Easyville on all the socials. Like, comment, subscribe, all that good stuff. Leave 5 stars on all the Spotify's and all the Apple Podcasts and all that. If you leave 4 stars, why even bother? Why even bother? Just leave the 5 stars and just do us a solid and just do it that way. And if you have any questions and if you're want to get on that next mailbag episode that we do. I'm not sure when we're going to do that, but at some point we will do another mailbag episode. The email address is too hard to pass podcast at gmail.com. Again, that is the too hard to pass podcast at gmail.com. That's the number 2. Jacques always tells me you have to say the number 2 because some people might not know that's not number 2. And I'm like, okay, sure, whatever, man. But anyways, Ian Stonebrook, thank you again, brother. I really appreciate you coming on to the show. And yeah, we will catch you next week. Hopefully with Jacques back from the undisclosed location that I'm not sure I can tell where he is. But anyways, peace, everybody.
I appreciate it. Thanks for having me.